Your place is in the nursing home with the old folks," yelled Darlene, my daughter-in-law, while my own son, Clayton, dragged my furniture to the window. My 74 years of life tumbled out that window with my belongings. He shoved me out of the house I had paid for myself. But they didn't know that my brother, Leon, a retired general, was already waiting at the door with his old army comrades. What the general did to my son afterward, I will never forget. My name is Roxanne, and that day I discovered that an adopted son, raised with all your love, doesn't guarantee he'll respect you when you need him most. Clayton always knew I had adopted him as a baby after my husband died in military service. I gave him everything, an education, a home, food, unconditional love for over 45 years. Darlene came into our lives 10 years ago like a snake in a wedding dress. From day one, I saw that cold, calculating chill in her eyes that made my blood run cold. She never wanted me in this house and gradually poisoned my son against me. "Roxanne, your son is a grown man now. He can't carry you around for the rest of his life," she told me with that fake smile I hated so much. And Clayton, my Clayton, began to change. Conversations became strained, hugs disappeared, glances filled with anger. For months, I endured her venomous comments, her allusions to my age, to how I was disrupting their marriage. Darlene had a plan, and I was too naive to see it coming. "Don't you think it's time you looked for a more age-appropriate place?" she asked me, washing the dishes I'd paid for in the kitchen I'd equipped. Her words were like daggers wrapped in velvet. What neither of them knew was that I harbored a secret that could change everything. My late husband had not only left me a lifetime military pension, but I also owned 3 valuable properties I had bought as investments. I never spoke of it because I wanted Clayton to grow into a man on his own merits. But Darlene began to suspect I had more money than I let on. I saw her rummaging through my papers when she thought I wasn't looking, and asking Clayton about my financial situation. She was a hunter, and I was her prey. "Mom, where do you get the money to buy these things?" Clayton asked me one day after I returned from the market with some purchases. Darlene stood behind him with that smile I knew all too well.
"From my pension, son."
"You know, your father took good care of me," I replied, without revealing the true extent of my wealth. But Darlene wasn't satisfied with that answer. She began asking more direct, intrusive questions. She wanted to know exactly how much I received, if I had savings, if there were properties. I evaded her interrogations, but she was persistent. The day everything escalated began like any other. Clayton came home from work with that look I knew all too well. The face of a man who had argued with his wife about me. Darlene appeared behind him, arms crossed, with that challenging gaze that warned me something bad was about to happen. "Mom, we need to talk," Clayton said, not even looking me in the eye. I sat on the sofa, bracing myself for another one of those uncomfortable conversations about my living situation, but this time, something else was in the air. Darlene had that triumphant smile that made the hairs on my neck stand up. "We've been thinking," Clayton began, his voice trembling like someone about to betray his own mother. "And we believe it would be better for everyone if you found another place to live." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. After so many years of sacrifice, of unconditional love, of giving everything I had and more, my own son was throwing me out of the house. "How can you do this to me, Clayton?" I asked, feeling tears welling in my eyes. "It just isn't working anymore, Mom. Darlene and I need our space. We're a young family, and you have your age." Darlene stepped closer, placing her hand on Clayton's shoulder as if marking her territory. "Roxanne, it's nothing personal, but we need privacy. We want to have children, and with an older person in the house, it's complicated." "An older person," I repeated, feeling my blood run cold. "I'm your mother-in-law, Darlene. I'm the mother of the man you love." "And precisely because of that, you should understand," she replied with that coldness I already knew. "Young marriages need their space to grow. You've already lived your life." Clayton was a coward. The son I had raised, to whom I had given everything, couldn't even defend me or look me in the eye while he stabbed me in the back. "Son, I paid for this house with money from your father's pension. Everything you see here, I bought with my hard work and sacrifice." I reminded him, hoping it would awaken some conscience in him. Mom, don't start that again, he replied, annoyed. Yes, you helped with some expenses, but that doesn't give you the right to stay here forever.
Some expenses?
I screamed, finally losing my composure. I paid for this whole house. I paid for your education. I paid for your wedding. I paid for everything. Darlene laughed. A cold, calculating laugh full of contempt.
Roxanne, genug visse Drama.
You don't have as much money as you pretend. You live on a pathetic pension, and we all know it. That was the last straw. Not only was I being thrown out of my own home, but they were also humiliating me by downplaying everything I had done for them. In that moment, I decided it was time for them to know the truth. But something held me back. An inner voice told me to wait, not to show my hand yet. Darlene and Clayton didn't deserve to know the true extent of my wealth. Not after this betrayal. You have a week to find a place, Darlene said, as if she owned the house. There are very good nursing homes in town. Suitable places for people your age.
A nursing home?
I asked, disbelieving. You want to put me in a nursing home? It's the most sensible thing, Clayton replied, finally showing some courage to speak. You'll be with people your age, have medical care, activities. I don't need medical care.
I'm perfectly fine.
I screamed, feeling rage consume me from within. Mom, don't play the victim. We know you don't have money to live alone. You'll be better cared for in the home, my son insisted, as if he were doing me a favor. Darlene smiled, satisfied. She had achieved her goal. She had managed to get my own son to throw me out of the house, and now she relished seeing my pain. Besides, Darlene added maliciously, we can remodel this house then. It's very old, very outdated. It needs a complete renovation. My eyes filled with tears as I heard those words. They weren't just throwing me out, they wanted to erase every trace of my presence, as if I had never existed.
And what if I don't go?
I asked defiantly. You will go, Darlene replied with an icy smile. One way or another, you will go. Clayton nodded, supporting his wife. My own son, the child I had raised with so much love, was threatening me. That night I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned in bed, thinking about everything I had experienced, all the sacrifices I had made, only to be thrown out like an old dog. The next day, Darlene began to act as if I no longer existed. She talked on the phone with her friends about renovation plans, about how she would turn my room into a study. All in front of my eyes, as if I were invisible. Yes, finally we're getting rid of the mother-in-law, I heard her say. It was about time. The woman is a complete hindrance. Clayton said nothing. He simply allowed his wife to humiliate me in my own home. The next few days were hell. Darlene treated me like an intruder, as if I were invading her space. She moved my belongings, rearranged the furniture, and glared at me contemptuously every time I met her in the hallway. Have you found a home yet? She asked me every morning with that fake smile I hated so much. I'm still looking, I replied, though in truth I hadn't looked for anything. I couldn't accept that they were throwing me out of my own house. On the 5th day, Darlene lost her patience. Roxanne, time's up. Either you leave voluntarily, or we'll help you leave.
Are you threatening me?
I asked, incredulous. We're warning you, Clayton replied with a coldness that broke my heart. That night, I called my brother, Leon. We hadn't spoken in months, but I had to tell him what was happening. Leon, I need your help, I said, my voice choked with tears.
What's wrong, Roxanne? Are you all right?
No, I'm not all right. Clayton is throwing me out of the house. He and his wife want to put me in a nursing home. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. I knew my brother. I knew that when he was quiet, he was furious. Excuse me? He finally asked, with that deep voice that reminded me of our childhood, when he defended me from neighborhood bullies. What you heard, Leon. After everything I've done for him, he's throwing me out like a dog. That boy is going to learn who General Leon Bergman is, he told me. And I knew my brother already had a plan. The 7th day arrived like a storm. Darlene awoke with a different energy, a fierce determination that made me nervous. Clayton left for work early, avoiding looking at me, as he had been doing lately. "Roxanne, today's the day," Darlene announced while drinking her coffee, as if discussing the weather. "You've had enough time to find a place. If you don't leave voluntarily, we'll do it by force." "Force?" I asked, feeling my heart pound. "Exactly," she replied with that icy smile I hated so much. "I'm going to call some friends to help you move, whether you like it or not." I spent the entire morning trembling in my room, unsure what to do. I heard Darlene talking on the phone, organizing my eviction as if it were a military operation. At 2 p.m., Clayton arrived with two men I had never seen before. "Mom, these gentlemen will help you get your things out," he said, unable to look me in the eye. "How can you do this to me, Clayton?" I asked, feeling tears stream down my cheeks. "I'm your mother. I raised you, loved you, gave you everything." "Enough drama, Roxanne," Darlene interrupted. "Gentlemen, you can start in the back room." The men began removing my belongings without any care. My photos, my memories, my furniture, everything was thrown out like trash. I watched my 74 years of life tumble out that window with my belongings. "Be careful with that photo," I screamed, as one of the men roughly handled the portrait of my late husband. "That's the only thing I have left of him." Darlene laughed. "Roxanne, it's just an old photo. In the nursing home, you won't have much space for so many things." "Nursing home?" I asked, horrified. "You've already signed me up for a nursing home?" "Yes, I found a perfect one for you. It's called St. Francis. It's full of old people like you. You'll love it," she replied sarcastically. Clayton remained silent, supervising the move as if it were normal, as if throwing out your own mother was the most natural thing in the world. "Son, please," I pleaded, grabbing his arm. "Don't do this to me. We can talk, we can find a solution." He roughly pulled away from my grasp. "Mom, it's decided. It's for the best for everyone." "For the best for everyone," I repeated, feeling anger begin to replace sadness. "Or for the best for your wife?" Darlene stepped closer, arms crossed. "Don't blame me, Roxanne. Clayton wants you to leave too. Tell her, honey." My son looked at me for the first time in days, but his eyes were full of coldness. "Mom, Darlene is right. We need our space. We want to start a family." "I am your family," I cried desperately. "I'm the only family you've had since you were a baby." "Were," Darlene corrected cruelly. "But not anymore. Now I'm his family." The men continued to remove my belongings, my clothes, my books, my medication. Everything was treated like junk. When they came to my jewelry box, the small casket where I kept the few treasures left to me by my husband, Darlene stepped in the way. "Leave that," she said, pointing to the jewelry box. "There must be valuable things in there." "That belongs to me," I protested, trying to get my jewelry box back. "Roxanne, don't be so dramatic," Darlene replied, taking the casket from my hand. "That's just old jewelry. They'll steal it from you in the nursing home." "Those are my memories," I screamed, feeling despair consume me. "My husband gave me this necklace. These earrings were my mother's." "Exactly," Darlene said with a malicious smile. "That's why it's better if someone younger takes care of it. Clayton, put this in our bedroom." My son took the jewelry box without a word. In that moment, something inside me broke. They weren't just throwing me out of my house. They were stealing my most precious memories. "Is that all I'm worth to you?" I asked Clayton, my voice broken. "An ATM you've drained to the last drop and are now discarding?" "Mom, don't exaggerate," he replied, showing no trace of remorse. "Exaggerate?" I screamed, finally losing control. "I adopted you when no one wanted you. I gave you my youth, my money, my entire life, and this is how you repay me." Darlene applauded sarcastically. "What a performance, Roxanne. We know you adopted him. You don't have to remind him every minute." "I paid for this house," I continued to scream, pointing to the walls I had seen grow. "I paid for your education. I paid for your wedding. I paid for everything you are. None of it, Darlene retorted contemptuously. You live on a pathetic pension. You don't even have enough to pay for a decent apartment. Pathetic pension, I repeated, feeling a bitter smile form on my lips. You believe that? For the first time in days, Darlene seemed unsure. Something in my tone bothered her. Roxanne, enough drama, she said, but her voice had lost its former certainty. As the men continued to remove my belongings, I heard Darlene talking on the phone with one of her friends. Her voice carried clearly from the kitchen. Yes, finally we're rid of the old hag, she said, laughing. You can't imagine how hard it was to convince Clayton. But when I told him we couldn't have children with his mother living with us, he immediately changed his mind. And she's leaving without a fuss? Asked the voice on the other end of the line. What's she going to do, protest? She's an old woman with no money, no options. St. Francis nursing home will take her, and she'll stay there until she dies. Problem solved. Her words pierced me like daggers. She spoke of me as if I were an annoying object they had finally gotten rid of, as if my 74 years of life were worth nothing. Besides, Darlene continued, unaware I was listening, this house is worth a fortune. Once we've completely renovated it, we can sell it and buy something better, or keep it and rent out rooms. It's a perfect investment. And what if she claims anything? Her friend asked. What's she going to claim? A senile old woman in a home. No one will believe her. Besides, Clayton is on my side. He'll sign any paper we need. I was speechless when I heard these plans. They weren't just throwing me out of my house, they were also planning to appropriate everything I had built. Darlene had orchestrated it all from the beginning. The men finished removing the last chair. My room was empty, as if it had never existed. 74 years of life summarized in a few boxes lying on the sidewalk. Roxanne, everything's out, one of the men announced. Where should we take the boxes? To St. Francis nursing home, Darlene replied before I could speak. I'll handle the coordination. No. I screamed, shaking off the shock. Those are my things. I decide where they go. Roxanne, don't start again, Clayton said, coming from the kitchen. Everything is already arranged. The home is waiting for you. Without asking me? I asked, incredulous. You want to lock me in a nursing home without my consent? It's for your own good, my son replied with that coldness that was now familiar to me. There you'll be cared for, fed, in company. I don't want to be in the company of strangers. I want to be in my house, with my family. Darlene laughed contemptuously. Roxanne, you're no one's family anymore. You're a burden, an obstacle, a problem we're finally going to solve. Her words were like a slap in the face. After all I had given, all I had sacrificed, they treated me like an old piece of furniture to be discarded. Your place is in the nursing home with the old folks. Darlene screamed, pointing to the door. Get out. Clayton shoved me outside. His own mother, the woman who had raised him with unconditional love, was being expelled by him as if she were a stranger. The shove was so strong I almost fell onto the sidewalk. Clayton. I screamed, trying to keep my balance. I'm your mother. Not anymore, he replied with a coldness that tore my soul. Today, I have no mother. But as I stood on the sidewalk with my scattered belongings like trash, I saw a familiar figure waiting for me. My brother, Leon, stood by the door, accompanied by 3 men I immediately recognized, his old army comrades. General Leon Bergman, at 72, was still an imposing figure. His immaculate uniform, his military posture, his steely eyes, everything about him exuded authority and power. Darlene and Clayton froze when they saw my brother. They knew who he was, knew his rank, knew he wasn't a man to trifle with. So these are the brave ones throwing my sister out of her own house? Leon asked with that deep voice that made everyone tremble. The silence that followed my brother's words was deafening. Darlene, who seconds before had screamed with so much contempt, now seemed to have lost her voice. Clayton instinctively recoiled, as if the ground beneath his feet was beginning to shake. Leon approached slowly with that military cadence he had perfected over decades of service. His 3 comrades flanked him, Colonel Ross Miller, Major Darrell Evans, and Captain Lance White, all men tempered by years of discipline and honor. General Bergman, Clayton stammered, trying to sound respectful.
I didn't know you were. Didn't know what?
Leon interrupted him, stopping in front of my son. That I'd come to see my sister being thrown out like a stray dog? Darlene tried to compose herself, but her voice trembled. General, this is a family matter.
Wie, family matter?
Leon repeated with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Do you find it family-friendly to throw a 74-year-old woman out of the house she paid for herself? Neighbors began to appear at their windows, drawn by the military presence and the scandal. Darlene realized she was being watched by the entire neighborhood, and her face turned red with shame. General, I believe there's a misunderstanding, Clayton said, trying to salvage the situation.
My Mutter needs special care. And special care? Growled Colonel Ross, taking a step closer.
Is that why you threw her belongings out the window like trash?
Darlene dispert. You don't understand.
This woman is a problem. She can't live here anymore. Major Darrell laughed sarcastically. A problem? The woman who raised this ingrate is a problem. You have no right to interfere in our affairs. Darlene screamed, completely losing her composure. Leon stepped so close to her that he was mere inches from her face. Madam, when it comes to my sister, I have every right in the world. Clayton tried to interject. General, please understand that. Understand what? Leon interrupted him. That my sister raised you from infancy, gave you an education, a home, food, and this is how you thank her? Is that what I should understand? Captain Lance walked over to the boxes lying on the sidewalk and began examining their contents. General, look at this. Here are important documents, family photos, medications, everything thrown out as if it were junk. We didn't throw these things out, Darlene lied desperately. The movers just temporarily put them there. Movers? Leon asked with dangerous calm. Who authorized a move? We did, Clayton replied, trying to sound firm. This is our house now. The general looked at me, and in his eyes, I saw the same protective fury he had when we were children and someone tried to hurt me. Roxanne, is it true you paid for this house? Yes, Leon, I replied, my voice thick with tears. With money from my husband's pension and my savings. Everything is in my name. Darlene blanched. That can't be true. It can't be true. I repeated, feeling anger begin to replace sadness. Do you think I've been lying all these years? Leon pulled out his phone. Ross, call Attorney Sterling. Have him bring the property deeds immediately. No. Darlene screamed desperately. You can't do that. Why not? Asked Major Darrell. Do you have something to hide? Clayton began to sweat. General, I think there's a misunderstanding. My mother lives here. Yes, but the house belongs to Roxanne Maria Bergman von Schubert, Leon said, reading from a document he pulled from his wallet. Here, I have a copy of the deeds she asked me to hold years ago. Darlene's face completely fell. All her lies, all her plans, crumbled before her eyes. But she has no money, she stammered. She lives on a pathetic pension.
Pathétique pension, looked Colonel Ross.
Madam, do you know how much the widow of an Army Lieutenant Colonel receives? Darlene shook her head, confused. $3,800 a month, Ross continued. Plus the income from the 3 properties her husband left her as an inheritance. Three properties, Clayton stammered, eyes wide. Leon smiled, satisfied. Roxanne never told you the truth, did she, son? She thought it would be better for you to become a man on your own merits. That's impossible. Darlene screamed. If she had that much money, she would have spent more, lived better. My sister is a thrifty woman, Major Darrell explained. She preferred to save and make wise investments, all to secure a future for her adopted son. Darlene reeled as if she had received a physical blow. No, that can't be. Oh, but there's more, Leon said, savoring every second of the revelation. Lance, show them the bank account. Captain Lance pulled a piece of paper from his jacket. Roxanne Maria Bergman von Schubert, current account balance, $290,000. And that's not even counting the value of the properties, Ross added. We're talking about a woman with assets of over $650,000. Darlene began to hyperventilate. This is a joke. This must be a joke. It's no joke, I said, finally finding my voice. It's the truth you never wanted to hear. The truth about the poor old woman you threw out of her own house. The neighbors who had ventured out began to whisper among themselves. The story spread like wildfire throughout the neighborhood. Darlene realized her reputation was being destroyed before dozens of witnesses. Roxanne! She screamed, trying to approach me. If you knew you had so much money, why didn't you tell us? We could have handled this differently. Leon stopped her with a gesture. Madam, I believe you've done enough damage for today. But General, Darlene insisted desperately. This is all a misunderstanding. We didn't know. Didn't know what? Asked Colonel Ross. Didn't know you were throwing an innocent woman out of her own home? Didn't know you were stealing her belongings? Didn't know you were committing abuse? It's not abuse. Clayton protested, standing up. She's my mother. I have the right. You have no right, Leon interrupted him firmly. You are an adopted son who has behaved ungratefully, and now you will face the consequences. Darlene began to cry, but they were tears of rage and frustration, not remorse. This can't be true. We had everything planned. You had everything planned? I repeated, feeling a new wave of pain wash over me. Since when have you been planning to get rid of me? Darlene realized she had admitted more than she should. I didn't mean to say, since when, Darlene? I insisted, stepping closer to her. Since you married my son? Since you first set foot in this house? From day one. Darlene blurted out, finally losing all composure. From the first day I saw you, I knew you were an obstacle, an annoying old woman who wouldn't let me be happy with my husband. Her confession dropped like a bomb on everyone present. The neighbors gasped. Clayton looked at her in horror, and the military men exchanged meaningful glances. There you have it, Leon said, satisfied. The truth finally comes out. Darlene realized what she had said and tried to retract it. No, I didn't mean that. I'm confused. No, Darlene, I said with a calm I didn't know I possessed. For the first time in 10 years, you've told the truth. Darlene's confession had dropped like a bomb on the entire scene. The neighbors, watching from their windows, began to whisper among themselves, and some even came out into the street to hear better. Darlene's reputation crumbled before dozens of witnesses. No, I didn't mean that. Darlene screamed, realizing the mistake she had made. I'm nervous. You're confusing me. No one is confusing you, madam, Colonel Ross said coldly. You just confessed that you had planned to get rid of Roxanne from day one. Clayton looked at her in horror. Darlene, is that true? You wanted to throw my mother out from the beginning. No, darling, they're twisting my words, Darlene replied, trying to take her husband's hand, but he pulled it away. Answer me. Clayton insisted, in a voice I had never heard before. Is it true you've been planning this since our wedding? Darlene fell silent, trapped between truth and lie. Her eyes darted desperately, searching for an escape that wasn't there. Silence is also an answer, Leon said gravely, sealing her confession. In that moment, Major Darrell approached me with a compassionate expression. Roxanne, do you have somewhere to stay tonight? Because obviously, you can't go back into that house with these people. It's my house. I protested, feeling tears well up again. I paid for this house. It's my home. And it will be yours again, Leon assured me. But for tonight, I think it's better if you come with me. Tomorrow, we'll sort this out legally. Darlene despaired when she heard the word, legally. General, please, can we settle this within the family? There's no need to involve lawyers. Family, Captain Lance laughed sarcastically. Now we're family? 5 minutes ago, you threw Roxanne out like a stranger. It was a misunderstanding. Darlene insisted. Had we known she had so much money, we would never. She stopped abruptly, realizing she had just admitted something even worse. Never what? Leon asked with dangerous calm. Darlene fell silent, biting her lip. Finish the sentence, madam, Colonel Ross insisted. If you had known she had money, you would never have thought of the nursing home, Darlene cried, trying to salvage the situation. A lie, I said, finding strength from the depths of my pain. If you had known I had money, you would have been even crueler. You would have tried to keep everything. Darlene looked at me with pure hatred. You know nothing. I know more than you think, I replied, feeling something light up inside me. I know you rummaged through my papers when you thought I wasn't looking. I know you asked Clayton about my financial situation. I know you've been planning this for months. That's a lie. Darlene protested, but her voice had lost all conviction. Clayton recoiled from his wife, as if suddenly realizing who the woman he had married truly was. Darlene, is that true? You searched my mother's papers. I only wanted to help, Darlene lied. I wanted to know if she needed financial assistance. Financial assistance? I repeated bitterly. By throwing my belongings out the window, stealing my jewelry box? Is that your idea of help? Darlene blanched, realizing I had mentioned the jewelry box. I didn't steal anything. No? Asked Major Darrell. Then explain why you took Roxanne's jewelry. I was only protecting her. Darlene cried desperately. From whom? Leon asked. From the thieves in the nursing home you yourself mentioned. The listening neighbors began to murmur louder. Mrs. Henderson, who lived next door, approached indignantly. Darlene, how could you do that to Roxanne? She was always so good to you. That's none of your business, Mrs. Henderson. Darlene screamed, completely losing her composure. But it is my business, Mrs. Henderson replied. Roxanne has been my neighbor for 20 years. She's a decent woman who doesn't deserve this. More and more neighbors came closer, all expressing their support for me and their outrage at Darlene and Clayton. The social pressure became unbearable for them. Get out! Darlene screamed at the neighbors. This is private property. Private property? Laughed Mr. Peterson, the neighbor across the street. This is Roxanne's house. You're the one who should leave. Darlene realized she had lost the sympathy of the entire neighborhood. Her screams, her cruel behavior, her public confession. Everything had been witnessed by people who had known me for decades. Clayton, I said to my son, stepping closer to him, look around, see how they're looking at us. Is this the man you wanted to become, the one who throws out his own mother? Clayton averted my gaze, ashamed. Mom, I didn't know you had so much money. And that justifies what you did to me? I asked, feeling my heart break. Is money the only thing that gives me value as a person, as a mother? No, he replied quickly. But Darlene was right about some things. We needed our space. Space for what, Clayton? Leon cut in. To plan how to rob your mother. We weren't going to rob her. Clayton protested. No. Asked Captain Lance. Then explain why your wife was talking about remodeling and selling the house. Clayton froze. How do you know that? Because your wife is very careless when she talks on the phone, Lance replied. Half the street heard her plans. Darlene realized she was completely exposed. All her secrets, all her lies, had come to light before the entire neighborhood. This is a conspiracy, she screamed, pointing at the military men. You've come here to ruin us. Madam, Leon said with infinite patience, we came here because my sister called me, crying, saying she was being thrown out of her own house. The only thing we did was arrive in time to prevent you from committing a crime. Crime? Clayton asked, alarmed. Eviction, elder abuse, misappropriation of property, extortion, Colonel Ross enumerated. Shall I continue? Darlene began to hyperventilate. You can't prove it. You can't prove anything. We can't. Major Darrell laughed. Madam, we have dozens of witnesses. We have recorded your own confessions, and we have physical evidence of everything you've done. Recorded? Darlene asked, terror in her eyes. Leon pulled out his phone. From the moment we arrived here, everything has been recorded, your threats, your confessions, your screams, everything. Darlene collapsed on the ground, overwhelmed by the extent of her defeat. All her plans, all her manipulations, had become evidence against her. Roxanne, Leon said, stepping closer to me. Do you wish to press formal charges against these individuals? I looked at Clayton, my adopted son, the child I had raised with so much love. He stood there, ashamed, defeated, finally recognizing the magnitude of what he had done. I'm retiring, I said slowly, remembering the words Darlene had used to humiliate me. The end of being a mother to someone who doesn't value me is final. Darlene lifted her head from the ground, her eyes full of tears of panic. Roxanne, please, can we work this out? Can we start over? No, I replied with a firmness I didn't know I possessed. There's no going back. You decided to treat me like trash, and now you will have to live with the consequences. Leon smiled proudly. That's my sister. Ross, call the attorney. Tomorrow morning, we begin legal proceedings. That night, for the first time in decades, I slept at my brother Leon's house. His home was spacious and elegant, a reflection of a successful military career and a generous pension. As I settled into the guest room, I couldn't help but feel a strange mix of relief and pain. Roxanne, Leon said, sitting on the edge of the bed. Tomorrow we'll start cleaning up this mess, but I need to know the whole truth. What else happened that you didn't tell me on the phone? I took a deep breath and told him everything. The months of humiliation, Darlene's venomous comments, how she had manipulated Clayton, the plans I had overheard about selling the house. Each word came out like a dagger from my chest. And why did you never tell them the truth about your wealth? Leon asked. Because I wanted Clayton to become a good man on his own merits, I replied through tears. I thought if he knew I had money, he would become dependent and lazy. I wanted him to work, to strive, to appreciate things. And instead, you raised an ungrateful son who threw you out of your own house, Leon said bitterly. I didn't know Darlene was like this, I whispered. When they got married, I thought I finally had a complete family, a daughter-in-law, perhaps grandchildren. Roxanne, that woman is a viper, and your son let himself be poisoned by her. The next morning, Leon kept his word. At exactly 9 a.m., Attorney Sterling stood at the door with a briefcase full of documents. He was an older man, about 60 years old, with the seriousness that distinguishes experienced lawyers. Mrs. Bergman, he said respectfully, I am very sorry for what has been done to you, but I assure you we will resolve this completely. Over the next 2 hours, we reviewed all my documents, the house deeds, the titles to the other 2 properties, the bank statements, the military pension documentation. Everything was in order, everything was in my name. This is very clear, Attorney Sterling said. You are the rightful owner of everything. Your son and daughter-in-law have no legal claim to anything. And can they put me in a nursing home against my will? I asked, still fearing that possibility. Absolutely not, he replied categorically. For that, they would need a court order proving mental incapacity. And you are perfectly sound of mind. What they did yesterday constitutes several crimes. Leon leaned forward. What kind of crimes? Eviction, elder abuse, embezzlement, threats. We could be talking about several years in prison for both of them. A shiver ran through me as I heard those words. No matter how much pain they had caused me, the thought of Clayton going to prison terrified me. Attorney, I said, my voice trembling, is there a way to resolve this without my son going to prison? Leon looked at me, surprised. Roxanne, after everything he's done to you, you're still protecting him? He's my son, I replied simply. He's confused, manipulated, but he's still my son. The attorney nodded understandingly. We could reach an out-of-court settlement, but that depends on how cooperative they are. At 2 p.m., we returned to my house. This time, we arrived in the attorney's Mercedes sedan, followed by Leon's car with his military comrades. It was a display of power, but also of the rule of law. Darlene and Clayton were in the garden, arguing fiercely. When they saw us coming, their faces fell. Darlene tried to run into the house, but Colonel Ross stopped her. "Gentlemen," Attorney Sterling announced, "I am here on behalf of Mrs. Roxanne Bergman von Schubert, the rightful owner of this property." "This is harassment," Darlene screamed. "You can't come here and threaten us." "We are threatening no one," the attorney replied calmly. "We are informing you that you have 24 hours to vacate this property." Clayton approached, pale as a sheet. "Vacate? What do you mean, vacate?" "Son," I said, stepping closer to him. "This house belongs to me. It always has. Yesterday, you threw me out of my own house." "But you can live here," Clayton protested. "We can work this out. We can all live together." Darlene looked at him furiously. "Clayton, don't be an idiot. She's here for revenge." "I'm not here for revenge," I said sadly. "I'm here to reclaim my home and my dignity." The attorney pulled several documents from his briefcase. "Here are the original deeds, the payment receipts, the complete documentation. Everything proves that Mrs. Roxanne is the sole owner of this house." Darlene snatched the papers and examined them desperately, searching for an error, a legal loophole she could exploit, but there was nothing. Everything was in order. "This must be wrong," she screamed, waving the documents. "These papers are forged." "Madam," the attorney said with infinite patience, "these documents are officially registered. You can verify them at the county recorder's office anytime." Clayton sank onto a garden chair. "This can't be true. All this time. Mom, does all of this really belong to you?" "Yes, my son," I replied painfully. "And not just this house, but also the downtown house and the apartment near the park. Your father left me all of it as an inheritance." "3 properties," Darlene stammered, eyes wide. "You have 3 properties and $290,000 in the bank," Leon added, satisfied. Money she saved for years to secure a future for her adopted son. Darlene sat on the ground, overwhelmed by the revelation.
"No, this can't be."
"If you had so much money, why did you live so modestly?" "Because I don't need luxury to be happy," I replied. "Because I preferred to save for my family. Because I thought it would be better to teach Clayton the value of hard work and effort." "But you could have lived like a queen." Darlene cried out, failing to understand. "I chose to live as a mother," I said sadly. Major Darrell stepped up to Darlene. "Madam, yesterday afternoon you threatened Roxanne, publicly humiliated her, and conspired to appropriate her property. Do you have anything to say about that?" Darlene looked at him, full of hatred. "You don't understand anything. Living with a mother-in-law is horrible. You can't condemn me." "I'm not condemning you for not wanting to live with your mother-in-law," Darrell replied. "I'm condemning you for the cruel way you tried to get rid of her." Clayton stood up and came towards me.
"Mom, I'm sorry."
"I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I didn't understand." "What didn't you understand, Clayton?" I asked, feeling the pain pierce me. "Didn't you understand that I am your mother? Didn't you understand that I deserve respect? Did I have to have money for you to treat me with dignity?" "No," he replied quickly. "But Darlene told me you were suffering, that it would be better for you to be with people your age, and throwing my belongings out the window. Was that for my best?" I asked bitterly. Clayton bowed his head in shame. This got out of hand. Darlene stood up angrily. "Clayton, don't let yourself be manipulated. She's playing the victim, but we are victims here too." "Victims of what?" Colonel Ross asked, incredulous. "Her lies." Darlene screamed. "She lied to us about her financial situation. She made us believe she was poor." "I never lied to you," I replied calmly. "I just didn't tell you the whole truth, and now I understand why that was the right decision." "What do you mean, the right decision?" Clayton asked, confused. Because if you had known from the beginning that I had money, you would have treated me well out of self-interest, not out of love. I wanted to know your true feelings for me. Darlene realized she was lost. Roxanne, we can start over. Now that we know the truth, we can be a real family.
No, he replied firmly.
It's too late for that. Attorney Sterling cleared his throat. Gentlemen, we have a proposal. You can voluntarily vacate the property and sign a document acknowledging the facts, or we can proceed legally with criminal charges. Darlene blanched. Criminal charges. Eviction, elder abuse, threats, misappropriation of property, the attorney listed. We're talking about 5 to 10 years in prison. Clayton despaired. Mom, please, don't let them put me in prison. I'm your son. I looked him in the eyes and saw something like genuine remorse for the first time in months. Son, I said painfully, yesterday you stopped being my son when you shoved me out of my own house. The words I had just spoken struck Clayton like lightning. He stood there, mouth agape, as if he couldn't process what he had heard. Darlene, for her part, began to hyperventilate. You can't do this. Darlene screamed, rushing desperately towards me. You can't destroy your own son over a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding. I repeated, feeling anger rise within me again. Throwing my belongings out the window was a misunderstanding? Stealing my jewelry box was a misunderstanding? Signing me up for a nursing home without my consent was a misunderstanding. We were confused, Darlene insisted. We thought it was for your own good. For your own good, Major Darrell corrected her. Don't mistake that. Clayton staggered closer, as if in shock. Mom, please listen to me. I know I made a mistake. I know I did everything wrong, but give me a chance to make it right. A chance? I asked, feeling tears rise. Clayton, I gave you chances for 45 years. I gave you my youth, my money, my entire life. And when I needed you most, when I was a vulnerable old woman, you betrayed me. But Darlene confused me, he cried, pointing at his wife. She filled my head with ideas. She made me believe it was the right thing. Darlene looked at him with murderous rage. Don't blame me. You wanted her to leave too. That's not true. Clayton protested. Of course it's true, Darlene retorted. How many times have you complained that your mother interferes in our affairs? How many times have you said we needed privacy? Attorney Sterling observed the exchange with professional interest. It was obvious that the couple was destroying each other, which made his job easier. Mrs. Darlene, the attorney interjected. Do you admit that you manipulated Clayton into throwing his mother out? Darlene realized the trap, but it was too late. I didn't manipulate anyone. He wanted her to leave too.
Darlene, be quiet.
Clayton screamed, realizing his wife was dragging him further into the abyss. I won't be quiet. Darlene retorted. If I go down, you're coming down with me. We both agreed to kick her out. Leon stepped up to me and placed his hand on my shoulder. Roxanne, you've heard enough. I nodded, feeling my heart break into 1,000 pieces. Listening to Clayton and Darlene blame each other, witnessing their marriage crumble before my eyes, was painful, but also insightful. Attorney, I said with a firm voice, proceed with the legal steps. No. Clayton screamed, falling to his knees before me. Mom, please, I swear I'll change. I swear I'll be a better son. Clayton, I said, bending down to his level. It's too late for promises. Yesterday, when you shoved me out of this house, you killed something inside me. You killed the trust.
You killed the unconditional love I had for you.
But I'm your son, he sobbed, holding my hands tightly. I'll always be your son. No, I replied, pulling away from his grasp. My son would never have treated me this way. My son would have defended me from his wife. My son would have appreciated the sacrifices I made for him. Darlene despaired, seeing that Clayton was losing the battle. Roxanne, I'm going to tell you the truth. Clayton always complained about you. He always said you were a burden. I just gave him the courage to do what he wanted to do anyway. Darlene, be quiet. Clayton screamed, but the damage was already done. Is that true, Clayton? I asked, feeling my world utterly collapse. Did you really see me as a burden? Clayton looked at me desperately, searching for the right words, but his silence was more eloquent than any answer. Your silence tells me everything I need to know, I said, standing up. Colonel Ross stepped up to the attorney. What course of action do we take now? First, immediate eviction, the attorney replied. You have 2 hours to remove your personal belongings. After that, we proceed with criminal charges. 2 hours. Darlene cried out. We can't pack a whole life in 2 hours. You should have thought of that before you threw Roxanne out in 5 minutes, Major Darrell retorted. Darlene turned to me with one last desperate plea. Roxanne, think carefully. If you sue us, it will be in all the newspapers. Everyone will know that you threw your own son out of the house. No. Leon corrected her with a grim smile. Everyone will know that an ungrateful son threw his elderly mother out of the house she paid for. Besides, Captain Lance added, half the neighborhood already knows what happened yesterday. The neighbors witnessed everything. As if summoned by his words, Mrs. Henderson appeared at the garden gate. Roxanne, are you all right? The whole street is talking about what they did to you yesterday. I'm fine, Mrs. Henderson, I replied, feeling my neighbor's support. Darlene, Mrs. Henderson said contemptuously, I can't believe what you did to Roxanne. She always spoke only good of you. She always defended you when other neighbors said you were a bad person. That's not true. Darlene protested. Of course it's true, Mrs. Henderson retorted. How many times did Roxanne tell us we were judging you wrongly? How many times did she ask us to give you a chance? Darlene fell silent, knowing Mrs. Henderson was right. And you, Clayton, Mrs. Henderson continued, pointing at my son. You shame me. Your mother raised you alone, gave you everything she had. And this is how you thank her? My husband and I talked all night about what kind of monster could throw out his own mother. Clayton winced under the weight of Mrs. Henderson's words. It was obvious that the neighborhood's social judgment profoundly affected him. Mrs. Henderson, Attorney Sterling said, would you be willing to testify about what you saw yesterday? Of course, Mrs. Henderson replied immediately. I saw everything from my window. I saw them throwing Roxanne's things. I saw them shove her. I saw them laughing while she cried. Darlene blanched even more. That's a lie. I wasn't laughing. I saw you clearly, Mrs. Henderson insisted. You were laughing while the men threw the furniture out the window. More and more neighbors came closer, drawn by the commotion. Mr. Peterson, Mrs. Green, the Smiths, all came to show their support and condemn what had happened. Roxanne, Mrs. Green said, taking my hands. We are all here for you. What they did to you yesterday was abominable. Yes, Mr. Peterson added. Darlene and Clayton have lost all respect in the neighborhood. No one will ever look at them the same way again. Darlene realized she had lost not only the legal battle but also the social battle. Her reputation in the neighborhood was forever ruined. This is unfair. Darlene screamed. You're all only hearing one side of the story. We heard what we saw with our own eyes, Mr. Peterson retorted. And what we saw was a cruel daughter-in-law throwing out a defenseless mother-in-law. Attorney Sterling seized the moment. With so many witnesses, this case will be very easy to win in court. Clayton despaired. Mom, please, think about what this will mean. I'll lose my job. My reputation will be ruined. Your reputation? I repeated bitterly. You're worried about your reputation? And what about mine? What about the humiliation you put me through yesterday? But that can be fixed, Clayton insisted. This can't. If you sue me, my life will be ruined forever. Your life was ruined yesterday, I said sadly, when you decided to betray the woman who gave you life. Darlene made one last desperate attempt. Roxanne, if you drop the charges, I promise you will disappear from your life forever. You'll never see us again. That's exactly why I won't drop the charges, I replied, because I want everyone to know what kind of people you are. I want you to face the consequences of your actions. The attorney closed his briefcase with satisfaction. Good, then we proceed. Gentlemen, you have 2 hours to remove your belongings. After that, anything remaining on the property will be considered abandoned. Darlene and Clayton looked defeated. They knew they had lost everything: the house, the money, the respect of the neighborhood, and possibly their freedom. Roxanne, Leon said to me, would you like to be present when they take out their things, or should we handle that? I will be present, I replied firmly. I want to make sure they don't take anything that doesn't belong to them. The next 2 hours were the most tense of my life. Darlene and Clayton entered the house like ghosts, defeated and silent, closely followed by the military men and the attorney. Every move was monitored, every item assessed. That TV stays here, Colonel Ross said, as Clayton tried to pull the television from the living room. Roxanne paid for it, but we bought it together, Clayton protested weakly. Do you have the receipt? Asked Major Darrell. Can you prove you contributed any money to it? Clayton did not answer. He knew I had paid for everything all these years. The appliances, the furniture, the house repairs. He had simply lived comfortably on his salary while I covered all the major expenses. Darlene went upstairs to our former bedroom with a suitcase. I followed her. I wanted to make sure she didn't take anything that wasn't hers. When I saw her open my jewelry box, I stopped her. That doesn't belong to you, I said firmly. I'm just taking my own jewelry, Darlene lied. What jewelry of yours? I asked. All these rings and necklaces were my mother's and my husband's. You never owned any jewelry of your own. Darlene's face turned red with rage. You can't prove that. Oh yes, I can, I said, pulling out my phone. I have photos of all this jewelry from before you married Clayton. I even have the certificates of authenticity for the most valuable pieces. Darlene dropped the jewelry box as if it burned her hands. Her last attempt to steal from me had failed. Besides, I added, is the Colonel recording everything? If you take something that doesn't belong to you, that's additional evidence against you. Darlene began to cry, but they were not tears of remorse, but of frustration and anger. This can't be true. We had our whole lives planned. Planned for what? I asked. To steal my properties, to get rid of me? For you to be an obstacle. Darlene blurted out, finally losing all composure. For you to have already lived your life, and it was time for us to live ours. Her words hurt, but they also liberated me. There was no longer the slightest doubt about what kind of person Darlene was. As she packed, I went to the living room where Clayton sat with his head in his hands. Attorney Sterling was reviewing some documents on the dining table. Clayton, I said, sitting opposite him, do you really think I deserved this? He lifted his head, and for the first time in months, I saw something like the son I had raised. His eyes were red, full of tears. No, Mom, he whispered. You didn't deserve any of it. But I got carried away by Darlene. She always said we were too young to have a mother-in-law in the house, that other couples had their privacy. And that justifies throwing my things out the window? I asked. No, he screamed, striking the table in frustration. Nothing justifies it. I went crazy. When Darlene started yelling that you should leave, something broke in my head, and I treated you like a stranger. That's because I became a stranger to you, I said sadly. You allowed Darlene to dehumanize me. You allowed me to become a problem to be solved, instead of your mother. Clayton sobbed openly. Is there a way to fix this? A way for you to forgive me? I don't know, Clayton, I replied honestly. The damage you've inflicted on me is very deep. Not just physically, but emotionally. Yesterday, I felt as if I had raised a stranger for 45 years. Darlene came down the stairs, dragging 2 suitcases. Her face showed a mix of defeat and resentment that made her look 10 years older. Are you finished? Major Darrell asked. Yes, Darlene replied bitterly. We've taken our few belongings from the poor old woman's house. Darlene, Attorney Sterling warned, Everything you say is being recorded. I advise you to be more careful with your words. More careful. Darlene laughed sarcastically. We've already lost everything. What else can happen? You can go to prison, the attorney replied, without batting an eyelid. And with every disrespectful word you utter, you worsen your legal situation. Darlene fell silent, finally understanding the gravity of her situation. Colonel Ross made a call, and a few minutes later, a locksmith arrived. We're changing all the locks, he announced, so they won't have access to the property. We can't even come back to get something we forgot? Clayton asked. No, Major Darrell replied. Anything you need, you'll have to request through the attorney and under supervision. While the locksmith worked, a moving truck arrived. To my surprise, it contained all my furniture and belongings that had been thrown onto the sidewalk the day before. I thought my things had been taken to the nursing home, I said, confused. We intercepted them, Leon explained with a smile. When Darlene called the nursing home yesterday, we also called and cancelled everything. After that, we hired a moving company to pick up your things and store them in a warehouse. Is everything there? I asked, hopefully. Everything, Captain Lance confirmed. We even rescued some photos that were broken and sent them for restoration. I felt a mixture of relief and gratitude towards my brother and his friends. In my darkest hour, when my own family had betrayed me, they had been there to protect me. The movers began bringing my belongings back into the house. Seeing my furniture, my photos, my memories back in their place filled me with an indescribable emotion. Darlene watched all this with a mixture of rage and disbelief. How could you plan all this so quickly? She asked me. I didn't plan anything, I replied. I simply have a brother who loves and protects me. Something you never understood. And what do we do now? Clayton asked, watching his few years of comfortable living vanish before his eyes. Now you must face the consequences of your actions, Attorney Sterling said. Tomorrow morning, we will file the formal charges. There's no way to avoid the lawsuit.
Clayton insisted.
We could consider a settlement, the attorney replied, but it would involve very strict conditions. What kind of conditions? Darlene asked, clinging to any hope. A public apology in the local newspaper, financial compensation for damages and losses, a 5-year restraining order against Roxanne, and community service in a nursing home, so you learn the value of respect for older people. Darlene's face contorted in disgust. Community service in a home? Exactly. Major Darrell smiled. So you learn what it means to care for older people, instead of mistreating them. And if we accept these conditions, Clayton asked, then you would avoid prison, the attorney replied, but the agreement would include a full admission of guilt. Darlene and Clayton looked at each other, weighing their options. It was obvious they didn't have many alternatives. The locksmith finished his work and handed me the new keys. For the first time in months, I felt my house truly belonged to me again. Roxanne, Leon said to me, should we stay tonight, in case you need company after all this? No. I replied, surprising myself with my strength. I want to be alone in my house. I want to feel peace again. Darlene and Clayton dragged their suitcases to a taxi they had called. Before getting in, Clayton turned to me one last time. Mom, he said, his voice broken, I know I have no right to ask you for anything, but is there any way you could forgive me someday? I looked him in the eyes, seeing for the first time in years the frightened child he had been when adopted, but also the cruel man he had become. I don't know, Clayton, I replied honestly. Forgiveness cannot be forced. It's earned with time, genuine remorse, and real change in behavior. And if I accept all the conditions of the agreement, and if I perform the community service and learn to truly appreciate older people, then maybe, I said, maybe in a few years, we can try to rebuild a small part of what our relationship was, but it will never be the same as before. Darlene got into the taxi without a word, defeated and bitter. Clayton looked at me one last time before following her. Take care, Mom, he whispered. You too, my son, I replied, surprised I could still call him that. The taxi drove away, taking with it the two people who had destroyed my life and my heart, but also the pain, humiliation, and fear I had endured for months. For the first time in a long time, I was alone in my house, but I didn't feel alone. I felt free. 6 months after that day, which changed my life forever, I sit in the garden of my new house, a beautiful estate on the outskirts of town that I bought with part of my savings. The afternoon sun caresses my face as I write in my journal, a habit I've adopted since finding my peace again. The legal process ended 3 months ago. Darlene and Clayton accepted the out-of-court settlement after their attorney explained that they faced a certain conviction of up to 10 years in prison. The public apology they published in the local newspaper was read by the entire community, revealing their cruelty and my innocence to everyone. Darlene is performing her community service at St. Francis Nursing Home, the very place she wanted to confine me. The nurses told me that she was initially arrogant and condescending towards the seniors, but gradually began to understand the vulnerability and dignity of older people. Her pride is completely broken, and now she cleans toilets and feeds patients who cannot care for themselves. Clayton works at another nursing home downtown. His supervisor called me a month ago to tell me my son had cried while helping an old man abandoned by his family. I think he finally understands what he did to them, the supervisor said. Every day he spends here is a lesson about the value of parents and the cruelty of abandonment. The scandal completely ruined both their reputations. Clayton lost his previous job when his bosses found out what he had done. Darlene was fired from the store where she worked after customers began to avoid her. Now they live in a small apartment on the other side of town, far from the neighborhood that knew of their crimes. My brother, Leon, visits me every week. We've reconnected, regaining the closeness we lost during the years I focused so much on raising Clayton. I should have intervened sooner, he always tells me. I should have seen what that woman was doing to you. You couldn't have known, I reply. I myself didn't want to see the reality. The neighbors from the old area visit me constantly. Mrs. Henderson, Mr. Peterson, Mrs. Green. All have told me that my story helped them appreciate their own mothers and mothers-in-law more. Your courage has taught us that it's never too late to defend yourself, Mrs. Henderson told me the last time she came. I've used some of my money to help other older adults who have suffered family abuse. Together with Attorney Sterling, we founded a foundation that offers free legal aid to elderly victims of abuse. Every case we solve, every person we help, confirms that I made the right decision not to remain silent. The house where I lived for so many years was bought by a young family with small children. I couldn't live there anymore after everything that happened. Every corner reminded me of the humiliation, the betrayal, the pain. This new house is my sanctuary, my place of peace, where no one can hurt me. 2 weeks ago, I received a letter from Clayton. It was long, full of tears and genuine remorse. He told me about his work at the nursing home, about the elderly people he cares for, about how every day he better understands the magnitude of what he did to me. Mom, he wrote, every time I see these old people abandoned by their children, I see your face. Every time one of them cries from loneliness, I hear your crying from the day you shoved me out the door. I've been living in a hell of guilt, but I know I deserve exactly that. The letter continued, I'm not writing to ask for forgiveness, because I know I don't deserve it. I'm writing to tell you that I finally understand who you truly are. You are the woman who saved me from an orphanage, who worked double shifts to give me an education, who sacrificed her youth for my future. You are the noblest woman I have ever known. And I was the cruelest son there could be. Darlene and I divorced, he confessed in the letter. We couldn't stay together after what we did. Every time we looked at each other, we saw our cruelty reflected. She moved to another city with her sister. I live alone now, and that's fine. Loneliness is my punishment. If someday, many years from now, when I've completely healed from all the harm I inflicted on you, if you could ever consider the possibility of us talking for 5 minutes, that would be the greatest gift of my life. But if it never happens, I understand. I accept it. It was my decision to destroy our relationship, and I accept the consequences. The letter ended, I love you, Mom. I know I shouldn't say that after what I've done, but it's the greatest truth of my life. I love you, and I endlessly regret having abandoned you when you needed me most. I read that letter 5 times before putting it in a drawer. I still don't know if I will ever respond. The pain is still there, vivid and sharp. But I also feel something like hope. Perhaps with enough time and genuine remorse, we can rebuild a small part of what our relationship once was. But for now, I'm focusing on my own healing. I've started taking painting classes, something I always wanted to do but never had time for. I've traveled to places I wanted to see when I was young. I've found new friends in the library's book club. For the first time in decades, I am living for myself. My daily routine is simple yet fulfilling. I wake up early, have breakfast on my patio, looking out at the garden I cultivated with my own hands. I read the newspaper. I work on my paintings. I eat lunch in peace. In the afternoon, I receive visitors or visit friends. In the evenings, I read or watch television. And I always go to bed grateful for the peace I have. The money I saved for so many years now allows me to live with dignity and generosity. I help my brother when he needs it, support charities, and have ensured that, after my death, my entire estate will benefit the foundation for abused elderly people. Sometimes, when I'm alone at night, I think of Clayton as a child. I remember his first steps, his first words, the spontaneous hugs he gave me when I came home from work. I remember the nights I spent awake when he had a fever, the times I defended him at school, the sacrifices I willingly made for his well-being. And I wonder where that loving child went. When did he become the man who shoved me out of my own house? Was it my fault for protecting him too much? Was it Darlene's fault for manipulating him? Or do some people simply change in ways we cannot predict or control? I have no definitive answers, but I have learned to live with uncertainty. I have learned that I cannot control the actions of others, but I can control my own reactions. I have learned that love should not be unconditional to the point of tolerating abuse. I have learned that it is never too late to defend oneself and reclaim one's dignity. Yesterday, I received a call from the supervisor of the nursing home where Clayton works. "Mrs. Bergman," he said, "I wanted to tell you that your son is doing exceptional work. He has developed a special connection with the patients, especially those abandoned by their families. It seems he has found his calling in caring for the elderly." "That's good to hear," I replied, and it truly was. Despite all the pain, he is still the child I raised, and I want him to find redemption. "I also wanted to tell you," the supervisor continued, "that we've established a gerontology scholarship in your name. Your story has inspired many people to take an interest in elder care." This news filled me with pride. My suffering had brought about something positive, helping to protect other elderly people from similar experiences. This morning, as I watered my roses, I thought of a phrase I had read years ago: "Sometimes the most beautiful things grow from the hardest ground." My new life, my peace, my purpose, all grew from the hard ground of betrayal and pain. I don't regret adopting Clayton. I don't regret giving him everything for years. I only regret not understanding sooner that kindness should never be practiced at the cost of self-destruction. As the sun sets each day, I sit in my garden and feel gratitude. Gratitude for having the strength to defend myself. Gratitude for having a brother who protected me. Gratitude for the neighbors who supported me. Gratitude for the attorneys who helped me, and gratitude for the fact that, at 74, I can still start anew. My story isn't just about betrayal and pain. It's about resilience, dignity, and the human spirit's ability to heal and flourish even after the deepest wounds.
I am Roxanne Maria Bergmann von Schubert.
I am 74 years old, and I am finally completely free. If you enjoyed my story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can write more stories. Thank you in advance. And you, what would you do in this person's place? I'd love to hear your opinion, so please share it with me in the comments. I'm always curious about what you think, and also tell me where you heard this story. For more life stories like this, like the video and subscribe to my channel. Many other stories are waiting for you. With warm regards until next time.